So glad to have you
I'm
here.
so glad to be here with you.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good conversation today. Hey there, my name's Deja Foxx. I'm an activist, a digital strategist, and a content creator who's been fighting for reproductive rights for the last decade. I got my start because I had bad sex ed. When I was 15 years old, I was sitting in a classroom with a sex education curriculum last updated in the 80s, taught by the baseball coach that didn't even mention consent. So I started showing up to school board meetings and demanding that they update that curriculum. It's where I found my voice and my fight. And for the last decade, I've scaled up that work, whether it was fighting for birth control access or abortion. Um, and I'm really excited to be here with my friends at Plan C today.
So, hi, my name is Imani Shabazz, and I am the Director of Partnerships at Plan C. So, Plan C is a nonprofit information campaign about abortion pill access in the US. And most notably, we have the Plan C Guide to Pills, which lets people know where and how people are finding abortion pills by mail in all 50 states and also the US territories. And outside of the guide, we have a whole host of other things that we do, including advocacy, research, education. And so, really, we're kind of a one stop shop for information around self managed abortion. I'm from Atlanta originally, and we have a horrible sex education program in the state of Georgia. And originally, I was in my ninth grade health education class, and we had to play this game where essentially you write down all your hopes and dreams, the school you want to go, like the college you want to go to, your most prized possession, and then they're like, "Ugh, you got pregnant, cross 2 things off your list." Imagine, right, for a moment, all these, ninth grade girls
Mhm.
sitting in this room crossing off their hopes and dreams just to set the scene. And so, at that moment, I was like, "Nah, I'm not really feeling it." So, that led to me getting a lot more information just about sexual and reproductive health in general, and really wanting to kinda dedicate my life and studies to furthering my knowledge and then advocating for my community because I was one of, 14 girls in that classroom, and there are so many other people who aren't getting access to accurate healthcare information, and I really just wanted to be able to be a voice of difference in that way. So that's how I got into this.
Plan C has these iconic stickers. You've probably seen them around, maybe at some of the bars or on campus where me and my friends have left them. It has a really simple tagline: "Want to be unpregnant." With a QR code that you can scan to get resources. Seeing those around, especially in a place like Arizona, where I was born and raised, where we faced the threat of an abortion ban from the 1800s, reminded me what it means to take control of our bodies and our future and our advocacy, regardless of changing laws. As a part of Gen Z, the chronically online generation, I want to know if I can get my abortion pills online.
To set the scene, we know that about 60 to 70% of abortions that are happening in the US right now are medication abortions. So this is a process that people are looking to find information on. And so that is where Plan C comes in and our team of public health researchers and activists and advocates. We really wanted to make a place where people could come and find trusted information that has been well researched in order to be able to answer these questions and not have to travel all over the internet to look for different answers for how do I fund this abortion? Where do I go? Do these providers speak the language that I speak? And so that is really where Plan C kind of fits into this larger digital ecosystem. So a lot of people don't know this, but 1 in 4 abortions are done using telehealth services, and thousands more are being done using alternative services or just other ways of obtaining medication abortion that are outside of the traditional healthcare system. The really great thing about the Plan C guide is that it has options, and all of those options can be mailed to you, which love it, exciting. And it is a lot of times people will ask, okay, well, how do I know this is legit? How do I know that I can trust this source? And really, the Plan C team has a host of public health researchers and a whole team of mystery shoppers that work to make sure that we can be as safe and trusted of a resource as we possibly can. And so we do things like test order from these sites that we have on our guide to make sure that one, they're providing the medications that they say that they are, and also that we can verify things like their shipping time, how much they cost, how far into pregnancy they'll prescribe until or offer the pills until, and then if they have providers that speak Spanish or other languages. And so we really want to make sure that this website has as much information for the abortion seeker as possible so that they don't have to scour the internet looking at all these different sources to try to find the right information. Because by and large, in doing that, you'll likely come across some fake page with some fake information. And that's what we don't want.
Right. So you could think of Plan C as like your bestie who does all the research. The type A
Yes.
friend
Yeah,
who makes the
yes.
reservations, who reads the reviews, who calls ahead
Yes.
as you're self-managing an
Yes.
abortion,
Plan C is the
as
person you want to plan
people
your
are
vacation.
self-managing an abortion.
Yes.
Hot. We've talked about how we could get it from online to our doorstep. Something we see on the shelves at the pharmacy is Plan B. Is that the same thing as Plan C?
Great question. No. And we actually get this a lot. Emergency contraception, of which Plan B is a brand, you take it shortly after having unprotected sex. Medication abortion, on the other hand, will terminate an already existing pregnancy. So you're past the point where Plan B would work for you. And now you would need abortion pills. And so that's really what the difference between those two things are. And a lot of times, and really sneaky politicians will try to put it in there that like plan B is an abortifacient as a way to kind of limit access to emergency contraception. That is not the case. Plan B will not cause an abortion. And I think that that kind of messaging ends up being really, really harmful because it then tries to, limit access to emergency contraception, which would be catastrophic for really everyone. I know everyone knows someone who has used Plan B. I think that the ramifications of something like that would just be so huge.
We've talked a little bit about where you can get abortion pills, who can use them, but a big question I get in my DMs all the time is, do you need a prescription?
There are a couple of different ways that people can access abortion pills online. One of the ways is the more traditional telehealth way where you do meet with a doctor, they go through a consultation process, and then they will give you a prescription. But for those who really want to go the completely self managed route, and when I say self managed, I mean an abortion that is taking place outside of the traditional healthcare system. There are also resources like websites that sell pills. And so these are just sites that have abortion pills and their like arsenal of medications that they offer. And someone can go to one of those websites, no matter if they have a prescription or not, and order those pills. No, you don't have to have a prescription in order to get abortion pills. But if somebody does prefer to go that way, then there are the traditional telehealth services as well. I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there about how safe medication abortion pills actually are. And I think that for me personally, I like to think of this in context because I don't know about you, but I don't spend my time looking at like the complication rates of medication. So I don't always know the exact numbers or what that means. I like to put it in context of the alternative. For most people, the alternative to having an abortion is going to be labor and delivery. And by and large, abortion is safer than labor and delivery. So much safer, actually, like 14 times safer. So just to put that in context there, abortion is going to be safer than labor and delivery. And so I think a lot of times when people are worried about safety, they're not actually thinking about everything that can go wrong in the actual just natural labor and delivery process. And then on top of that, when we look at the actual safety numbers of these medications, the risk of major complications of something that might require hospitalization, like hemorrhaging or something, that tends to be what people worry about,
Mhm.
is less than like 1%. So this is an extremely, extremely safe medication. And some people may have heard the thing going around that abortion pills are safer than Tylenol, which is absolutely true. And I think when we are talking about abortion pills being safer than Tylenol,
Mhm.
what we're saying is that we trust people to take Tylenol. We trust people to go to the pharmacy, pick it off the shelves, go home, and we don't think anything of it. But yet, when we have these abortion medications, which are factually safer, all of a sudden we're like, whoa, 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 call the doctors, lock it up. Okay. And that is really why we like to emphasize that there are so many medications out there that people take, and they may or may not know the complication rates of those medications, but we still trust them to be able to make the decisions that are best for them. And that's what we want for a medication abortion as well.
Do you need to talk to a doctor at all to get abortion pills?
You don't. So if that is not what somebody desires for their abortion experience, then they can just go to one of these sites that sell pills and order them and conduct the process entirely in their own space with whoever they want around them, and that can be the end of that process. People are and have always been getting abortion pills without prescriptions. This is not a new thing. I think a lot of times we think, or when people hear about medication abortion, because it's been kept out of the public kind of information in the US for so long, they don't realize that this has been, one, FDA approved for over 20 years, and two, it's been used worldwide for countless years before that. So this is a medication that is sold over the counter in countless other countries. And so it really is a US thing that we're seeing, where these medications have been kind of systematically denied to people. And so, can people get them without a prescription? Absolutely, they already are.
It is just a fact that people have been getting abortions since basically forever. But now we're seeing a trend in which here in the United States, you've got to go to a doctor. Sometimes you have to cross state lines. You've got to do a million Google searches. Tell me a little bit about demedicalization.
Really, what we have as a core value at Plan C is self-determination, right? So the ability for people to be able to make the healthcare decisions that they know are right for their bodies, that they
Mm,
know are right for their, spirit. And so we really wanted to have that be central in the Plan C guide. When we are talking about demedicalization, we are saying we want to take a process that has been heavily restricted in our traditional healthcare system and move it outside of that. What that looks like is being able to order pills from a website and then being able to set up your abortion in a space that feels comfortable to you, in a space that has your favorite things around you,
yeah.
your favorite people. You can be watching, I don't know,
Wait, I was gonna say, so what's in your kit? What are you setting up? What's
you
the show?
know,
What's the music? Who's there?
no, personally, if I were to have, I think, the perfect like SMA, which spelled
Starter kit?
starter kit for me, I think I'm going to throw in some Grey's Anatomy. It's a classic for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
it, it bridges generations at
Yeah.
this point. I think also having things like heating pads,
Mhm.
having maybe some ginger chews if you get nauseous or if you're like prone to nausea. You could also have a coloring book. People sleep on the
Mm.
coloring books, but there's something very calming about like a repetitive motion like coloring, or some people are cozy gamers as well. That's me. I love a little cozy game.
Ah,
So,
okay.
I think that that would kind of be my starter pack, and also big one, having super absorbent maxi pads is also a really big one. So, and not the little cutesy little like always infinity little can fit in
Uh-huh.
my pocket ones. No, I mean like heavy duty, super absorbent ones.
Industrial grade,
Industrial
serious
grade.
stuff. Gotcha.
Yes, that's what we want.
Okay, so that's a little bit of the process and how it could look
Yeah.
at home, surrounded by your people,
Yeah.
your family, in your home. How could people find out exactly what is available to them locally?
The really great thing about the guide is that you are able to just put in your state, and then all of these options will come up. So whether you're looking for that kind of traditional telehealth format where you meet with a clinician, have that consultation, and then that's mailed to you, and you want to be able to like have a conversation with your provider, ask questions, that kind of thing, there's that option. There's also the option to completely step outside the medical system and use a website that sells pills just to have those medications shipped to you, and then be able to kind of go with the flow, set it up how you want to. And so really that all starts with going to plancpills.org/guide and putting in your state just to see what options are available. And even if you're not currently looking for abortion medications, I always say it's a really great thing to just go on there, see what options are available to you because you never know when you're going to need them.
Okay. You never know when you're gonna need them.
Mhm.
This leads me to my next piece so easily. I know Clancy Pills is a guide, and it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a gift guide, but say that I wanted to order pills in advance or for a friend, what would that look like?
So that is something possible. So it's called advanced provision or just getting pills in advance. For the sake of this conversation, let's just say you're ordering a set just to have on hand in case you or someone you know needs them.
Yeah,
And that
you're a girl with a
is
5-year plan.
a question that we also get asked a lot when we talk about advanced provision is about, okay, well, like where should I like keep them? Which I know seems like a where should I keep them? Put them
Yeah.
forever. But a fun fact about this is a lot of bathrooms have medicine cabinets.
Mhm.
Don't put them in there. This is
Ooh.
pro tip.
Wait,
Pro
yeah,
tip.
this is something I've never
Right,
heard. This is a
right.
hot take.
Yeah, pro so your bathroom,
Is it because
right?
it's like if you're taking a steamy shower?
Exactly. Your bathroom
Um,
actually fluctuates in temperature so often. And so it's actually not great to keep medications in your bathroom.
so true.
A lot of times people will think, yeah, obviously it's a medicine cabinet, that's where it goes. But really, it's a lot better to keep all your medications in a cool, kind of dark place. So, like a sock drawer, a kitchen cabinet, something along those lines.
What is the shelf life of medication abortion? And not in my medicine cabinet because it gets steamy in there.
Mifepristone and misoprostol are the two medications that make up the medication abortion process. Technically, they have two different shelf lives. So, mifepristone is around 3 to 5 years, and misoprostol is around 18 to 24 months. But because you're likely not going to remember that, the best thing to do is look at the expiration date that will come on the medication sent to you and just go based off of that. And a lot of times people will kind of also ask, okay, well, like, what if I have these like pills and if it's a day after the expiration
Mhm.
date, is it automatically just not gonna work? It's not that they're not gonna work, but after that expiration date, the efficacy does go down slowly, little by little.
And now we know that things are changing day to day in the United States as it relates to legality and abortion. Things might be different today when we film this than they are when you're watching it. I want to know if there are any parameters that folks that live in different states should know when accessing self managed abortion.
So that's a really good question, and I think that I have a very nuanced answer for it.
We need that.
I think that when we're talking about legality, it's important to know that there have been probably hundreds of thousands of self-managed abortions that have occurred in the United States, and about maybe 1% of those see a level of like like prosecution or what people are worried about of like legal involvement. And that's not to say that it's not a concern, but just to put it in context, by and large, this is not as widespread of a problem as people I think like to think it is, or that politicians like to make us think
Mm.
it is. And
One more time. One more time. Tell
yeah,
them. Let them know.
while we do see a lot of news stories about people being prosecuted or being targeted for their abortions, by and large, most self-managed abortions are happening without any type of interference from the legal system. And so, by and large, most people are going to be okay in this process. And we also have steps to make sure that you are being as safe as possible. There are a couple of really, really great things that I always like to talk about when it comes to digital security and privacy. And my first, and if you remember nothing else I say, remember this:
Take notes.
Google is not your friend. Okay. So Google is a data machine. Okay. They love your data. They want to sell your data. They don't care about your privacy,
Google is
which
not your friend,
they're not your
not
friend.
your bestie.
Not at all. And so really what we want to get in the habit of is, breaking up with Google. Okay. We want to use browsers that are more privacy focused. And there are a lot. There's Brave, there's DuckDuckGo, there's Firefox Focus, Tor Network, which Tor Network gets a bad rap. I know people think like, oh my gosh, that's like for hackers and like people who are trying to do illegal stuff. But really, most of the people that I know on the Tor network are like trying to get over like paywalls for like newspapers. It's like so chill. But they have their own browser, and so there are a lot of way more secure browsers to use that actually do care about privacy. And I would 100 times over recommend people to stop using Google as a search engine and start using one of these more privacy focused ones.
If you're hearing this, Google, we're breaking up. It's actually not me, it was you. Okay, so for the chronically online girls, what are your top 2 or 3 tips for staying safe?
Prosecution or the legality around this can really differ based off of where you are, who you are, how far along you are into pregnancy. And I am by no means a legal expert, but what I do know is having these conversations about your abortion process and writing specifically on apps that are owned by Meta, so like Facebook, Instagram, in those comment sections
Or your DMs?
or your DMs. That's what I meant. Thank
Not as
you.
private as you might think.
They're not as private as you might think. There have been instances where somebody is like, say somebody is looking into somebody's abortion process and they can use those meta DMs as evidence. And Meta has been known to comply with law enforcement officials in getting people's DMs for evidence. If someone is going to have a conversation about their abortion process using an encrypted messaging app, so we're talking the signals, the wires, the matrices of the digital texting kind of apps, always better, because then what happens in those instances is they're end-to-end encrypted. So even if law enforcement officials were to go to Signal and be like, "Hey, I want I want that person's chat history," they'd be like, "I'm literally so sorry, I don't have it." So, that tends to be a really, really good way to just keep those messages private or just, talk to people instead. But one
Groundbreaking. Speak to your friends.
but a lot of times when we're looking at people who find themselves in these kind of legal ramifications for having this self-managed abortion, unfortunately, more often than not, they are turned in by someone that they know. And I hate that, right? Like we want to be able to trust the people that we love with this information. And when we see those like weird men in Texas who are like, let me sue my girlfriend for like exercising her like rights. It is heartbreaking. What we really want is for people to have spaces that they can go if they do need to talk to someone and they are worried that maybe the people around them aren't the most supportive. What do you do? So, on our guide, we do have a whole host of resources to help people in the decision making process and also in the process of going through the abortion. So if someone does need that kind of emotional support, there are places like Repro Care or Exhale Pro Boys that offer confidential peer-to-peer counseling, and they are phenomenally pro-abortion and they want to be able to support you through this. And so if someone is in a situation where they feel like, I don't know if I can trust the people around me, that is not to say that you should not be able to talk to anybody about this. You need to be hush hush because we also don't want to further perpetuate this like isolation and cone of silence around abortion. That is not at all what we want, but we do want people to be safe. Having those types of resources are also just really, really great ways for people to get the care that they need and the support that they need, but also staying safe. And another really great resource that everybody should know about is the If When How Repro Legal Helpline. It is a free, confidential helpline where people can go and submit their legal questions to a pro-abortion lawyer, and using their helpline does constitute as like requesting legal advice, and so it is covered in their kind of client attorney confidentiality. That is a really, really great way to get those legal questions answered, especially if they're very, very specific.
And let me just add that I am not a doctor, but 10 out of 10 people who tattle on someone for having an abortion are a big loser, and that's in my professional opinion.
Yeah.
People might be asking, what is the difference between an abortion and a miscarriage?
I feel like what most people don't know is that the term abortion is a completely neutral term that designates the ending of a pregnancy. If we're getting all medical here, most times there are either induced or spontaneous abortions. This is how doctors refer to them, with spontaneous abortions also being known as miscarriages. And so doctors are already talking about miscarriages in this kind of abortion language. And so I think really abortion has gotten very political in the ways that we talk about it, but really it is just a really neutral term for the ending of a pregnancy, whether it be spontaneous or induced.
We've all heard the word abortion, but there's surgical abortions and medical abortions. What's the difference?
When people talk about surgical abortion, what they're really talking about is when people go into a clinic or a doctor's office and they're being put under a sedative in order to kind of have the pregnancy removed from the body in that way, versus when we are talking about medication abortion, that is when these medications are taken and then the pregnancy is terminated that way. So really it's just a matter of whether or not someone wants to go into the clinic and have that kind of procedure, or if they have some other kind of pre-existing condition or a reason why they may need to go in for a surgical abortion. In both instances, abortion, either surgical or medical, is not just for people who are intentionally trying to induce the loss of a pregnancy, right? So people who have natural miscarriages, sometimes those don't always complete on their own. They need a little bit of help to help the pregnancy pass. In those situations, some people do choose to go the surgical abortion route to just, it's called a DNC, and that's just when they kind of they'll like vacuum kind of out the tissue. However, sometimes people will also use medication abortion in the same ways. If a miscarriage was incomplete, then they can also use those medications to just help flesh out the rest of the tissue that is remaining. Both surgical abortions and medication abortions are used way more than just in the instance of what we quote unquote call abortion. And so that is also what is really important about making sure that access to these medications and procedures are not as heavily restricted as they are right now, because they don't just affect people who are trying to get rid of a pregnancy, right? Like these affect people who also lost a wanted pregnancy, right? These affect maternal health outcomes. These affect the ways in which people are able to recover from pregnancy complications. The bans around abortion medications and abortion access don't just harm abortion seekers, they harm everyone. I think that is really important to note when we're talking about what the difference between these things are and also why people use them.
It really just underscores that abortion is healthcare,
Yeah.
even if there are some politicians who refuse to see it that way. Abortions, uh, or abortion is something that can be a part of your life, whether you want a pregnancy or don't. They can happen in your home, they can happen in a doctor's office. But it seems like we've lost a lot of that in the headlines. There was a time where people said there's no way Roe versus Wade could be overturned. That happened. We have heard talk of a federal abortion ban. And it's true that a lot of people are saying, but there's no way. But what would a federal abortion ban look like?
I think when we're talking about a federal abortion ban, there's a couple of things, right? So the idea that, okay, now mifepristone is completely off the table, because that's where a lot of these conversations revolve around, is mifepristone in particular. Two things could happen, right? So let's say they completely ban mifepristone in the US. There are still going to be sites that sell pills, international doctors that have mifepristone and will likely be okay to send it into the US, which is already happening, right? Like that is already a way in which people are getting abortion pills in restricted states. So that could just be what happens international, or not internationally, but nationally, right? Like it could just be that now we shift over to using these international sites more so than the domestic kind of providers that people tend to go to. Or another option is that I know that I mentioned earlier that the medication abortion process was a combination of mifepristone and misoprostol. That does not always have to be the case. There's another option that is misoprostol only. And it's just as safe and just as effective. But the reason why the kind of Miffy miso combination method is preferred is that the miso only method, so misoprostol is the medication that induces uterine contractions, basically. So taking more misoprostol means more contractions. And so in the miso only abortion method, you do take a lot more misoprostol than you would in the combination method. So it can just be a little bit more crampy of a process, but it is still safe and it is still effective and it is still a possibility. And the chances of them out just banning misoprostol as well is a little bit more complicated because misoprostol is used for so many other things, right? It's used to treat stomach ulcers, it's used to stop excessive bleeding during pregnancy and childbirth. It's a medication that has a lot of uses, and getting rid of it all full stop would mean just a total like breakdown and medical care. And so I think that do I know whether or not they would go as far to get rid of misoprostol? I mean, I guess I can't put it past them, but I think that hopefully that these 2 methods will still be available in the grand scheme of there being a federal abortion ban. But really, what I think is likely to happen is that just as hard as they're working to ban abortion as an option, abortion activists are working harder to make sure that people are still able to access them. And so I think that no matter what happens, so as long as people need access to abortion, there are going to be people that help make that happen. I feel confident in the idea that as a community, we will find ways to come together to make sure that people are still able to access the care that they need. And if we have to get scrappy, if we have to get creative, then that's what we'll do. We've been scrappy before, we'll be scrappy again, and I think collectively we can make anything happen. I think it's also interesting to think about this because a lot of people think that Roe versus Wade was like the the quintessential like now abortion is just like and free for all, but really Roe versus Wade had a lot of limitations. It had a lot of gaps. And there were a lot of people and a lot of places who still weren't able to access abortion with Roe v. Wade in place. And so groups had to still work even when it was in place to make sure that those people were able to access care. And just like they did it in that situation, we would do it again. I think that is what I would say about a federal abortion ban is that the devil works hard, but we work harder.
So true. Something I want to pull out here is that legality and access are not the same thing. And organizations like Plan C are focused on access. If we were to see a federal abortion ban, what would it look like? What would be banned? What wouldn't? These are all hard questions. But something I know for sure is that people would get abortions anyway.
Exactly.
We've heard this idea of leave it up to the states, right? Something we hear politicians saying on stages, we hear in headlines. But what does that even mean in practice?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of times when people are saying they want to leave it up to the states, they mean whoever the powers of be in that state are, whoever the lawmakers are. And the really crazy thing about that is that just about anyone can make a law.
Oh,
Okay. And the thing about that is that you don't necessarily have to have expertise in the thing you're making a law about to make the law. And that tends to be what we see across the board with the politicians that are making abortion bans is that a lot of them probably couldn't like spot a uterus if you like begged them. By and large, I'm not even really sure why they're doing this because we've seen that the majority of Americans want access to abortion, right? Like they're actively making laws against what their demographic wants. And so leaving it up to the states really just means leaving it up to people who have no expertise in abortion making laws about who and who cannot access it.
one of the effects of leaving it up to the states is that people, depending on where they live,
Mhm.
have a different
Yeah.
access, right? And that disproportionately impacts Black women, Latinas, Indigenous women, and their ability to access care.
I think what's also important to realize is that a federal abortion ban, so completely banning mifepristone and misoprostol, would have catastrophic effects on reproductive health care in general, right? Like these medications are used for a whole host of different reasons, whether it be to stop postpartum bleeding, whether it be to, help with stomach ulcers. And so having these medications off the market means that more people will die. And I think that that is what we're not really talking about enough when we see people talking about the idea of a federal abortion ban. They see it as like a win for the unborn, but really it is going to cause a lot more deaths. And I think that specifically, like when you were saying earlier, that these things disproportionately affect people of color, low income people. We know that a lot of these abortion bans are kind of concentrated in the South that do have some of the largest populations of Black women, Latino women, Indigenous women. And so these are, and not even, I'm saying women, but this goes way beyond just one gender. You know, people of all genders have abortions. And I think that that's another conversation we would have for another day. I think we see a lot of these laws and they are scary and they're confusing. And honestly, that's what they were designed to do. They were designed to scare and to confuse and to delay care for people. And so really, I think that when we're talking about how do we get through this, the simple answer is we get through it together. We lean on our communities, we lean on the knowledge that we have and the care that we have for our neighbors, for our families, for our friends, and we get them the care that they need, and however that has to happen is however we do it. But I think what's important to know is that there will always be people committed to making sure that people are able to access the care that they need, and we're not gonna stop.
When I got started in this work, it was a decade ago. I was 15 years old, and we were in a very different place than we are now. In a lot of ways, it feels like we are further behind than when I started. But I want to be really clear that this is not the 1950s. We have access to the internet, self managed abortion, resources like Plan C pills in a way that women like our grandparents or our mothers may not have had. And so we have an opportunity and an obligation to meet this moment to make sure that folks all across this country can access the care that they need. It's a fact that most lawmakers are not doctors, and a lot of the laws that we see written around abortion can be confusing. They can be vague, and worse, they can be misleading. Why is that?
I think a really good way to think about it is you can't fight for rights that you don't know you have, right? So I think that if they can confuse you enough to the point where you won't even like bother to seek out care because you're like, I'm too scared to like do anything, then that's what they want, right? Like they're writing these in a way that hopefully they can like delay care enough to where you're not able to access these things anymore, right? And so really what we are seeing in how people write these laws is that they want doctors scared, right? They want doctors to be like, I don't know if I can do this because I don't want to lose my medical license, or I don't want to, or then you'll see like abortion seekers like, I don't know if I should do this. Like, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want my kid to go to jail. I don't know what is right to do in this situation. And then there's if there's no one there to say, "Hey, actually there is this safe way forward. There are ways to protect yourself." Then that's it, right? Like they just won't get the care that they need. And so it's really really important to have those resources out there that let people know that this is safe, that people are here to support you, that these medications are effective, and that you have a right to access them. And seeing the way that these laws are written, it tends to have this kind of chilling effect, right, on healthcare providers and also abortion seekers, where essentially we're too scared to move, right? We don't know what is safe and legal for us to do, so instead we do nothing. And I think that that is really the goal that a lot of these laws have outside of just being cruel i- in their implications, like being like suing your neighbors for maybe accessing abortion care is wild, right? Like it serves to further isolate our communities. It serves to really just harm people. Nobody wins in this scenario. And so I think that when we talk about this too scared to move kind of chilling effect, what we're really saying is people are scared and we want to and that fear is valid, right? Like that fear is so valid. And I too am scared sometimes, you know? Like I work in this space and it's scary. It can be confusing. And I feel like what really serves to ground me and what I hope will help ground all of you is that there are people who want to make sure that no matter what is going on in the laws, no matter what they're trying to scare us to do or not do, that there is accurate information out there and that there is support in making the decision that you know is best for you. And so I think that really that is what Plan C boils down to, is making sure that you have that self-determination, that right to self-determination to make healthcare decisions that are going to be best for you and your family.
And if your attention span is totally cooked, we have a rapid fire Q&A for you. First things first, there is a common misconception that taking abortion pills could affect future fertility. True or false?
Absolutely false. 100% not true. I think that this idea, I'm not even necessarily sure where it came from, but abortion pills leave your system quite quickly. So your fertility actually will return quite quickly after utilizing medication abortion. So if there is a fear about unwanted pregnancy after taking medication abortion, then you really do need to follow it up with a form of birth control afterwards. So it does not affect your future fertility, but shortly, like, you should still use protection afterwards because your fertility will come back quicker than you think.
I've seen some concern about weight limit on abortion pills. Get into it.
Yeah, I think this actually comes a lot from the idea that Plan B and abortion pills are the same thing. So, Plan B does have a weight limit, right? It's like 150, 165 pounds, and then it becomes less effective. Abortion pills don't have that. So, anybody of any size can take abortion pills and it'll be just as effective. So, no, there's no weight limit with abortion pills.
If somebody is asking themselves, are these pills going to affect my hormone replacement therapy? What do you have to say?
Yeah, that is a really good question. We get this a lot because I think there this goes into that kind of thing that I was saying earlier about how abortions don't just affect cisgender women. This is a procedure that everybody can partake in and that everybody needs. And so the idea is that there are some people who are on HRT, and they worry that taking abortion pills will affect their hormone replacement therapy, but it won't actually. There will be a slight spike in estrogen levels, but it's a very, very slight spike and it will decrease like almost immediately after the procedure is done. And so there really is not a concern if someone is taking testosterone or estrogen and wants to go through with a medication abortion.
Okay. Say you're not pregnant, my bad, and you take abortion pills. Can they hurt you?
That is a really good question. And the answer is no. Taking abortion pills, if you aren't pregnant, won't hurt you. One thing that I will say is sometimes people ask about ectopic pregnancy. So they are, if they maybe have an ectopic pregnancy, so they know that they're pregnant and they take the abortion pills and nothing happens, like they're like, what's going on? Like, I know I'm pregnant, but these aren't working. That could be a sign that, yeah, that pregnancy is like a topic, which just means that it's taking place somewhere other than the uterus. Like it implanted somewhere other than the uterus. And so if you do have an ectopic pregnancy and take abortion pills, it won't hurt you, but it won't work either. And so that's just something to consider as well.
If I got my abortion pills online and my bestie got hers at the hospital, are they the same pills?
Absolutely. Same thing. Those are absolutely the same medications, no matter if you got them from the hospital, if you got them from a site that sells pills, if you got them from a telehealth provider, same thing.
And now this is a hard one, but we know that abortion pills are safe, but does a medication abortion hurt?
It's definitely an uncomfortable process, right? Like, I don't think anybody's gonna say, "Yeah, I had, like, the best, like, physical experience ever going through this process," but how much it actually hurts can depend on a variety of things. One, it depends on how high your pain tolerance is naturally, and that can differ wildly between people. It can also depend on how far along into the pregnancy you are when you're taking them. So, the farther along into pregnancy that you are, the more cramping that you might experience. However, you can do things like take ibuprofen, just like over the counter pain medications to help with that cramping. And you can also use things like heating pads or just little comfort things to kind of help with the pain management side of things. So there are ways to mitigate it, but it shouldn't be like extremely painful.
Say there was someone out there in a state where There are some serious abortion restrictions. They've taken the pills. They're scared. Where can they turn to get support?
A really, really great resource for everyone to have on hand is the Miscarriage and Abortion Hotline. It is a completely free, completely anonymous resource that is staffed by medical professionals. The really great thing about it being staffed by medical professionals is that people can ask those medical questions, right? So a lot of times people will be like, "Oh my gosh, am I bleeding too much? Am I doing this?" And so being able to go to the Miscarriage and Abortion Hotline, have those questions answered, have somebody reassure you or let you know if further action needs to be taken is a really great resource to have on hand.
What options are out there if someone is a minor, maybe under 18?
There are a couple of different ways to go about this. So, different providers will have different um, kind of rules around how young of a patient they can prescribe to if you're going like the traditional telehealth route. Some of those can be, depending on the state, it varies. However, websites that sell pills typically don't have any sort of age restriction on them. So, really, they're not necessarily checking the age of the person ordering the pills. There are also some states that have judicial bypass, if you will. So, basically, if you live in a state where parental consent is like required for accessing like an abortion, you can go through this judicial bypass process to say, like, actually, I don't want to have to get my parents' consent. And so that is another process to go through. Though it can be a bit involved. So just know that up front. So the websites that sell pills, I think, are a really great option if there are minors looking for care because they don't have age restrictions.
And a little bit of a big sister PSA, if you are a minor and you need resources, you are not alone. We have resources to help you out. That's why we're here. That's why we're having this conversation today. And if you're seeing this, it's for you. There are a whole lot of folks out there guilty of asking Chat GPT to do a whole lot of things for them. Maybe make an agenda for the day or help them write that paper. But can Chat GPT give me answers about my self medicated abortion?
This is something we've been seeing a lot of recently. And the thing about Chat GPT and other types of like AI assisted, you know, platforms like it is that they pull sources from the entirety of the internet, right? So, especially when we're talking about abortion, there's so much false information about abortion on the internet, and Chat GPT doesn't have a way of knowing whether or not what it's actually saying to you is false or not. And so, best practice, don't use ChatGPT to answer these questions because there's a really good chance that they might accidentally give you a crisis pregnancy center or tell you some information about something crazy like, I don't know, like abortion pill reversal or something just because it's on the internet. And it's not true at all. And so it's a lot safer to go through a trusted source to get that information than using ChatGPT.
Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true.
Yes.
And then we've used the term crisis pregnancy center a few times. Could you define it?
So, a crisis pregnancy center is essentially a place that makes it seem like they offer abortion services, right? Like, it'll make it seem a little bit like, "Yeah, you can come here and talk about your options," but really, they do not offer abortion services, and their entire purpose is to try to get you to keep your pregnancy, basically. And so they'll do things like give you an ultrasound or like, you know, try to like counsel you, but really all the counseling that they're doing is to get you to keep that pregnancy. And so a lot of people accidentally find themselves in these crisis pregnancy centers not thinking they're going to get like the care that they wanted and realize very quickly like these people are trying to like do something nefarious. And so um and it doesn't hurt like it also doesn't help that they are like seriously backed. Like they've got buku money at
Yeah.
the crisis pregnancy
Some of
center.
it federal money, by the way.
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
it. Your tax dollars, unfortunate but true. Um, yeah, I mean, they are essentially catfishing,
yeah,
right? They are
basically.
catfishing you. They're buying Google ads to be at the top of your search. I know there was one across the street from my high school. They're placing themselves next to
Oh,
clinics.
yeah.
And so, bottom line, we've got to be careful. We've got to go to the people and the resources we trust, and Plan C Pills is just a great place to start. When it comes to abortion, we have seen some scary headlines. We've heard some heartbreaking stories online, and even people like RFK or Trump seem to have a whole lot to say. But I want to know what is happening on the ground in real people's lives. Give me the story time.
We've seen so many horrific stories about people dying because they're unable to access care or having just the worst complications because they got care too late. And really that's what they're working these bans are working how they were designed to work, right? Like this is the effect of banning abortion and the medications that we use in abortion services. And so when it's honestly, as a public health practitioner myself, it's, like, heartbreaking to see that, like, the public health practitioner that's supposed to be the face of our country is, like, giving information that is, 1, wrong, and 2, just, like, honestly and genuinely is harmful to people.
It has been so great to talk to you today, to get to ask my questions, our questions. Is there any last thing you want to say? One last call to action? If there was one thing you wanted people to know, give us that final word.
If you do want to get more involved with Plan C, you can join our community. It is really cool. We're on Discord, so I know like all the cool kids are on Discord. So
Mhm.
you can join us there, and we have a whole host of activities for our community members, whether it be legal webinars, medical webinars, just more informational stuff, digital security. So if you are interested in learning more about this topic, we would love for you to get involved with us. Or if you have a project or something that you want to highlight even larger around SMA, reach out to us, submit a partnership inquiry. We want to work with you all to get this information out there because that is how we combat these bans. That's how we combat the misinformation is we have to work together. So please let me work with you. If you would love to get even more involved, you can order free Plan C stickers at our website and you can put them allegedly anywhere. It's a really great way to do a small action that has a really big impact.
So
So,
true. The girls are getting Plan C stickers with the QR codes, and they're putting them in the restroom at the bar. They're putting them up in the bathroom on their campus. They're handing them out to friends. And let me just add that when things feel really big in the news, when they feel out of our control, when they feel far away, we need to come back to our relationships, our friendships. Sit down, have a conversation like this with a friend or a family member. Pop into one of these self managed abortion trainings, become a resource to your community because those skills don't go anywhere, regardless of changing laws or elections. Become a resource for your community. Plug in at Plan C Pills. And thank you for your time and your hard work.
thank you.